Shalom, this is Hakam Yara ben-Emmett, proud Karaite Jew, hailing from Kent Mill, Silver Spring, Maryland, United States of America. Hope everyone's been well. Yes, hosting the Torah Watchman Show International for another exciting topic of interest series video. Hope everyone's been well so much. Thank you. The title of this video is Tefillin, or what is Tefillin between Rabbinates and Qar'ate Jews. It's a very important topic in respect to how you quantify Jewish law or oral Torah. We're going to get into this subject. I'm going to try to be fair to both sides in my essay and prepare a transcript. Now, first of all, is Tefillin mentioned in the Torah? Well, roundly among Rabbinates, Orthodox Jews, rabbis, they say absolutely. Tefillin is mentioned throughout the Torah in several verses. So the concept of tefillin is mentioned in the Torah, specifically in Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 8, and I'll show this verse behind me in a few minutes, where it instructs Jews to bind them, tefillin, bind as a sign upon your hand. Literally, this is what the English word for word translation in Hebrew says. And they shall be what you call or known as totafot between your eyes, okay? Like frontlets, that kind of thing between your eyes, like a symbol of you honoring God's holy commandments and as witness to others, both personally and externally. And it's referring to the practice of wearing tefillin boxes. You've seen those black boxes before. They wear them predominantly on the arm. Some people right-handed, some people left-handed, it might vary. But they have the boxes predominantly on their arm. If you're right-handed, you have it on your left arm. And they have 7 bands of black leather that they wrap around very meticulously. And it has to be specifically correct to be kosher as far as the color, the wear and tear of it. But even the black boxes, they cannot be scarred or not have that nice little kosher black paint on them. And then you wrap it around your hand several times there, and that may vary between Ashkenazi and Sephardim. And I'll show you an example of this behind me on how a rabbinate's hand looks like when he has all these binds and bands of leather wrapped around their hand. Lastly, they have another tefillin box that they place on top of their head, almost like a crown, and the box is approximately here when they wear it. Now, key points about tefillin in the Torah from a rabbinate point of view, not mine, okay? Primary verse is Deuteronomy 6:8. Okay, the meaning if the binding mentioned refers to straps of the tefillin boxes. So rabbis and rabbinates take it literally when they say binding. They actually bind your arm up in these 7 bands. It can be quite tight, and it can suppress blood circulation over a period of time. You need it tight enough because if you're moving your arm back and forth with a siddur and praying, that it can come loose. I know this because I used to be a rabbinate many years ago. I still have those tefillin stored away as a memory of what I used to be when I'm not anymore. Now, the significance of this, tefillin serves as a physical reminder to constantly contemplate and observe the Torah's teaching. That's very interesting, okay? You see a lot of yeshiva students, for instance, wearing tefillin very predominantly, but when they're in yeshiva, they're only studying the Mishnah Torah, the comments of the Torah, and the Talmud. That's what they're doing. So this is like metadata or information about the Torah, but they study and memorize predominantly all these Talmudic writings, the vast amount debates and disputes in there for 4 years, for their academia. Now, the reverse is true for Karaite Jews. They look at it differently. We read the Torah verbatim and straightforward without any opinions, allusions, or interpretation. Okay? If it says clearly, this is done for this, well, you cannot just piecemeal select one verse, one sidra, and form halakha on that one verse. Now, I'm going to read verses leading up to verse 8 and chapter 6 of Deuteronomy or Devarim. Qar'ate Jews do not wear tefillin because they interpret the biblical passages that are traditionally used to justify the practice as metaphysical, okay, not literally, metaphysical, spiritually, okay? So meaning that the commandment is the constant reminder of the Torah in one's heart, okay, one's heart and mind, and rather than literally binding as another word for tefillin is phylacteries to the body as done in Rabbinic Judaism, okay? They believe wearing tefillin would be an over-literalization of the scripture. Now, I did some research. I'm surprised. Maybe in times past, some Karaite Jews sects wear tefillin. But, you know, the problem that Karaite Jews have with tefillin is not the symbology of it and not the tradition of it, is that it's mandated as kosher by Jewish law. And that's where we draw the line in the sand. We say, no, we don't want any part of that, because we only respect only Moshianic covenant, 613 mitzvot, as our Jewish law, okay? So in this topic of interest video, I will discuss the divergent points of view between Rabbinate, Qar'ate Jews, in respect to oral law commandment for wearing tefillin, okay? Now, I know my target audience there is varied. I know a lot of people out there. I've done some analysis. You're in the United Kingdom. God bless you. A lot of you are Christian, B'nai Noach, and Jews. Maybe a few Muslims are interested in this as well. Let me just give you a quick disclaimer. I am not a Talmudist. I'm not. I am Tanakh and nothing else. I've sworn that to myself. After all the monkey business I have experienced personally with this, when I learned Hebrew over a period of years and understood what Hebrew said versus all these translations in English and other language, I knew that I was taken down a rabbit hole by the Rabbinates, literally. And I have woken up. I've woken up and now can breathe more freely than ever before, because I feel like I'm honestly keeping the Torah without all the onion peels and wraparounds of things, layers of things of rabbinical debates, okay? So, now what is the opinion of God? Well, let's break it down carefully, each Hebrew word or phrase for one of the verses referenced to the Rabbinates about tefillin. But first, take a look at a few introductory passages to understand the proper context. So, the easiest way to take scripture, Christian, out of context in the Hebrew Bible is to take one verse and not look at the first verses going to the target verse and the ones after. Christians make a horrible problem interpreting themes and allusions, progressive revelation from Isaiah 53, because they don't read Isaiah 52:8, where actually those artificial chapter breakouts begin. So as far as Rabbinates, they do the same thing, and I'll add some detail to qualify what I just said. Now, look at verse 6 and chapter 6 of Devarim. And these words which I command you this day shall be upon your heart. The operative word here, the words that Moshe has given the Jewish people from God, inspired Moshe to say anything. He didn't say anything from his own imagination. He did not debate these issues with the judges. He spoke plainly as I'm speaking to you, at least trying to, that God gave him some words to say. He said them, and nothing else but what God gave him. If Moses had questions about what God was saying, God would give him additional information. Of course, he'd write it down too. Now, verse 7, and you shall teach them to your sons and speak of them, sons and daughters. Not all Jews just have sons, and speak of them when you sit in your house and when you walk along the way and when you lie down and when you rise up. Okay, what it's saying is these are actual commandments. These are commandments to, first of all, to your home, your homestead, your wife and children, both sons and daughters, at home as an eternal reference point, because you spend a lot of your time at home, right, if you're a family person. But also when you leave the house, you go to the store, you go to synagogue, and if you live in a Gentile nation like I do, your witness there is very important to be consistent what you claim to be true in your heart, but what's portrayed outside to the rest of the world. So this is very important. We're talking about a heartfelt message here that God has forgiven you, and you're keeping that sacred to yourself. How do you demonstrate that love affection to God? For saying, I do believe in your commandments and I will keep them. Well, in verse 8, it says, and you shall bind them, these commandments that Moses had given the Jewish people, that you have taken your heart, in your mind and heart. When we say Shema, you're literally saying, I will love the Lord my God with all my heart, mind, and soul, and resources, essentially what this is saying. So you will bind them for a sign, okay? That's an operative word in English, for a sign upon your hand, okay? And they shall be frontlets between your eyes, here, okay? Now, clearly, the God of Moses was speaking heart to heart in regards to his commandments in verse 6, okay? Verse 7 goes further, that your heartfelt love for the commandments of God so much that they will be blossomed from your heart to be a verbal and living witness before your children all times of the day, okay? Not even when it's convenient, when it's inconvenient, okay? So when someone comes to your house late at night, they need something, knock on the door, you're in a bad mood, you worked hard all day, you have to just remove that frown and give God the benefit of the doubt. It may be someone that God sent there. You have to have that witness. You're keeping these commandments on your heart. It controls your behavior. Do you need artificial devices and amulets wrapped around you to do that? Well, some rabbis and some Orthodox Jews do. Okay? So this is a verbal living witness before your children all times of day, both in your homes and outside among others, your neighbors and friends, and at the workplace. I wore these clothes, for instance, at work today. Okay? That's just who I am. Now, have you heard that saying that you hear but you don't listen? Well, there's a lot of information coming in all the time. Sometimes that's information overload. Sometimes you're thinking about something completely different and the people talking to you, and it just goes through one ear and out the other. But are you listening? You know, college student needs to listen to professor teaching, not just hear what the professor is saying. Sometimes you focus more on writing down what the professor says. You're not listening to what the professor is saying, okay? Now, finally in verse 8, the words become a binding or seal of trust upon your hand, and be for ornaments per se, as another English word that's translated instead of frontlets between your eyes. Behind me is verse 8. I'll show that there, written in Masoretic text. I'll show you the original Masoretic text, and you can take a picture of this, your mobile phone, you want to, when you see my video, and read it for yourself, okay? So before we move forward, I want to compare the simple language here for what Rabbinates call Tefillin, or in Hebrew, and I'm going to break this out in two primary phrases. So the phrase means, and you shall bind them as a sign on your hand. Now in Hebrew, this literally says that Vakashatam levot al yadkim. Yadkim is it comes from, is a derivative of yod, and it's essentially talking about your hand. Okay, Yadkim. Now, do you remember the yod in Hebrew? If you studied Hebrew in school, or just just from friends or things like this, or you're a Hebrew student, of course you know that all about that song and everything else. But anyway, it is equivalent to Y in English. I say it's transliterated to Y, and the yod is a device used by the hand, literally to point to Hebrew text in the Torah. So when someone is called up to the bima to read the Torah, rabbi or someone else appointed to do that, they take a yod. It literally has a hand on the end. It's a device. It's kind of silver, and I have one of them too because I have a couple Torah scrolls at home. And you literally point to the Hebrew text when you read it, and you never touch it with your physical hand, but that device, out of respect. Now, notice that Rabbinates in English changed the translation from hand to arm. Now, this is about 2 years ago I noticed this, because I have a bilingual Siddur. I like Sephardi, but I recently adopted a Qar'ate Siddur. But anyway, it's bilingual, it's R-scroll, and it has Hebrew on one side and English on the other. And I've always, for years when I was a rabbinate myself, I noticed that it said arm. I just didn't question it, but it actually, the Hebrew, it says hand, even though some of the wrappings and bindings, everything is around your hand, with that little black box, which actually has little Torah scrolls inside of it, sealed. That box is actually affixed just above your elbow. Rabbinates consider tefillin kosher when they meet certain specifications. You have to be licensed to manufacture tefillin or to repair them. When I used to wear these, I had an old pair before, my wife's grandfather, and they were scratched. So I looked this up on Amazon. I actually found kosher black paint for tefillin, believe it or not. So I painted that meticulously. I actually believed in it, that it was Jewish law to wear these, and I didn't question the rabbinates for that, because at that time I didn't do the deep diving in the Hebrew myself to read it and find out the truth behind it, okay? So other Jews inspect tefillin on others, make sure there's no major cracks in the leather and things like that. So there's a lot of halakha, Talmudic halakha built around tefillin that you'll not find in the Torah at all, okay? So ancient tefillin recently discovered, and I think in the Qumran caves, were brown in color, natural leather color. So going back, say, 2,000 years ago, rabbis, Pharisees, or Jews in general, they didn't paint it black. So it's kosher today in contemporary world to paint it black, but back then it was very simple, and it was just a brown leather-like pouch, okay? That you essentially you had attached to your body. Now, before that, they were considered amulets or good luck charms or magical charms and things of this nature. I mean, some people have rabbit's foot in their pocket. Well, Jews going back 2,000 years and more, based on evidence finding in the Qumran caves, they actually found amulets that were used in place of tefillin. Something else I learned, the Hellenist Greek philosopher, very famous individual, Jew, Philo of 20 to about 40 BCE, before the Common Era, stated the following about tefillin, and proving it was more metaphysical and literal. Now, bear with me, is a little wordy. Now, section 137 in his works here. The law says it's proper to lay up justice in one's heart, okay? And to fasten it as a sign upon one's head and as frontlets between one's eyes, figuratively imitating by the formal expression that one ought to commit the precepts of justice. So talking about your heart and justice to others, and the way you ethically treat other people, not to one's ears, which are not trustworthy. So don't believe everything you hear, okay? You might hear an argument or hear a gossiping lie about someone. It may not be true, okay? Which are not trustworthy. For there is no credit due to the ears, but most important is the dominant part, is stamping and impressing upon them the most excellent of offerings, a well-approved seal, okay? So that like my wedding ring, it's a seal to remind me about fidelity and my marriage commitments when I took my wife underneath the chuppah, okay? It's the same kind of thing like talismans and things of this nature. So you have this symbol, you have this seal upon you, and in section 138 of this Philo writing, and by the second expression, that is necessary not only to form proper conceptions of what is right or versus wrong, but also to do what one has decided upon without delay. So keeping your word, keeping your promises. In other words, keep following the commandments of Moses, okay? If you need a talisman or amulet, I mean, I have a Megan David around my neck. I wear it all the time. I wear my wedding band all the time. I don't need these things to remind me my love and commitment to God. I don't need it, but it makes me feel comfortable. Okay, is it Jewish law for me to wear a Megan David? No. Okay, is it Jewish law for me to wear a wedding ring? No. In fact, a lot of Jews don't even wear any wedding rings. Okay. and we take them all off during Yom Kippur, all the jewelry. Anyway, moving forward, so early sects within Karaite Judaism followed many of the teachings of Philo, but later on in the Middle Ages and further, they departed from Philo's teaching. But it started a lot of groundwork, foundational things, like for the 10 fundamental principles of Karaite Judaism that they followed along. But they concluded on what I just read you, Philo, that even Philo, a great mind of his time, a Jew, Hellenist Jew, unfortunately, but he believed that Tefillin was for this excerpt from the Torah in Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 8, was metaphysical and not literal, just like Karaite Jews do. Now, the second phrase is, and they shall be frontlets between your eyes. Okay, the Hebrew here says, Vehiv lak ben ha-ini im shalak. This essentially is talking about shalak is your eyes, and ha-ini im is actually between your eyes. So this is breaking out literally what it says in Hebrew in the text when they say, and they shall be frontlets between your eyes, okay? So that whatever we're not allowed to put tattoos in our body, but whatever you're using for symbology, whatever you need, if you need a ring, a string wrapped around your finger to make you remember something very important, do whatever it takes. Now note, Chabad changes the English word from frontlets to ornaments. I looked this up on the internet today to push their invention of the tefillin. In context, frontlets usually means a headband. Okay, some people wear headbands, sweatbands, or whatever you're running in the summer. But definitely the chief priest, the Kohen Gadol, had a band around their head and had a hat and had Hebrew writing for their dedication to the Lord their God in temple service. Okay, so frontlets means headband, literally, if you look it up in Webster's dictionary. That was worn primarily by Levitical priests and not other people. When you use the word for, compared with will be or is, and these kind of trying to say indirect phrases, instead of this shall be this shall be that, where you're having more of a inferences about something indirectly. That's what I'm talking about. And that's why Karaite Jews sit back and they say, well, when it says you would do this as a sign for this and this, etc., it means it's metaphysical. Why? Because it does not provide any details whatsoever. If this was a physical amulet or device that needed to be constructed, the Torah says nothing about it. So there's no details in the Torah on how to build a tefillin. The Rabbinates came up through trial and error over 2,000 years, hundreds of years in building these things. So the procedure and details for not only wearing, but the procedures and details for building and developing tzizit is a lot different than tefillin. This is the next topic here, comparing what the Torah says about the absolute tzizit and the metaphysical tefillin. Okay? Again, neither word, tefillin or tzizit, is found in the Torah. Okay? It's contemporary language applied to descriptions that you find in Torah just for ease of use. Okay? So, but there is details in the Torah. I'm going to read you on how to build or craft or develop tzizit. Now, in Numbers chapter 15, Bamidbar, verses 37, 38, I'll read these verses quickly in conclusion. Verse 38 says, speak to the children of Israel, and you shall say to them that they shall make for themselves, okay? You're building something, fringes on the corners of their garments, fringes, threads, strings, that kind of thing, throughout their generation, Lador Vador, forever and ever, and they shall affix a thread of sky blue wool on the fringe of each corner. So they would just attach it. It's implied that these threads are actually were white, like from sheep's wool, that kind of thing. and then to contrast with sky blue. But this is a commandment. It's very clear. It says this. Now, most of all rabbinates disobey this commandment to use a blue thread. You don't find them wearing a blue thread. But instead, they use all white threads because sages reported a rare sea snail, a sea urchin. They extracted the bluish blood from it, and in Roman times, about 2,000 years ago, it was literally driven driven to extinction. And the Jews stopped benefiting from that color blue, and they stopped dyeing these threads for the tzitzit accordingly. Now, they did not, after that time, since the animal is extinct and you cannot find an animal like that, they're not sure anymore what that blue color looked like. Now, they did not know what the blue color was, so what they decided to do to play it safe, some Orthodox Jews go further to have all black because the Torah does not say any of these threads were white, but it's implied that they're probably white. You don't know. Listen, the main thing to learn from this, okay, for tzitzit, is that whatever color you choose, red, blue, or green, for the main tzitzit, or the threads that you have, cords you have on the four corners of your body, for the four directions, of the earth, north, south, east, west, that you have a triangular like kind of shirt back then is worn the time of Moshe, and we have a tzitzit katan, as that called, and they have these threads attached to each corner. They're looped around in a small hole in each corner that we have. Now, it's not that important what color the other threads was. Most important that you have a bluish thread attached to each one of these breakouts of cords on the four corners of your body. Now, verse 39 says, why do you have these fringes on you? This shall be fringes for you. When you see it, you will remember all the commandments of the Lord to perform them, and you shall not wander after your heart's seductions, lust, and after your eyes, which will cause you to go astray. And remember, the frontness of your eyes is a symbol and sign about Tefillin, and tzitzit is actually adding more to that. Okay, in fact, when you say your Shema on Shabbat in synagogue, you say all the verses and everything else, you're mentioning tzitzit all the time. You're mentioning all the time, and every time the language says tzitzit, you're supposed to pick up these threads and you're supposed to kiss them. It says nothing about kissing anything remotely related to tefillin. The whole emphasis in Shema and the sacred prayer that we say every morning, weekdays, and Qar'ate Jews say it as well, and Rabbinates say it all as well, is about this tzitzit that you have as a commitment around you. Okay, so in verse 40, in ending, so that you shall remember and perform all of my commandments, this God's commandment, and you shall be holy, your body, your life, your heart, your mind, and soul, and strength, and all your resources will be kadosh, kadosh, kadosh before Yehovah Elohim. Now, do you have any questions about this video? I tried to be in detail as much as I could based on my fact-finding and research. Please send me an email to Yara ben-Emmett if you have any more questions. I'll post my email in the description for this video. I thought you would find this very interesting, okay? Now, Jews are a byproduct of a lot of things, namely tradition. But when does that tradition become law and mandates for kosher root and things like that you don't find any of these extractions per se or progressive ideas found in the Torah or the prophets? Now, tzitzit is mentioned many times in the Torah. The implication of tefillin is also found there as a sign, but the prophets don't focus on this too much. They simply say, keep God's commandments, because God promised you blessings and admonishment based on your free will to keep these commandments. If you need a physical amulet or something upon your body, tzitzit or even Tefillin or whatever, these little boxes around you to make you a better person, well, do what you need to everyone's personality is different. But understand my main point as a Karaite Jew here. It is not kosher root. It is not Jewish law to wear these black boxes upon your head and your forearm. It's just not. I used to have Jews come up behind me when I was sitting in shul, in an Orthodox shul, and I incidentally had one of these black bands turned over from the shiny to the dull side. He said, "Excuse me, sir, I'd like to turn this over here. It's not correct." And this is a young man from Shiva. This is how obsessive they are about these so-called mitzvot. You have the 613 mitzvot in the Torah that everyone can say amen to. You have all these other mitzvot in the Talmud, especially in the Sanhedrin Talmud. So listen, Jewish law is diversified between Karaite Jews and Rabbinates. I explained to you because they believe oral Torah trumps everything literally. Okay, they believe when they say Torah and speaking, there may be in my mind thinking about Talmud, but they're with equality. They're holding the Talmud and the Torah together in a balancing scale, and they're all weighed the same measure. Because I believe that oral Torah came from the Jewish people and came from Mount Sinai and was given to Moshe, and they gave it to the Jewish people, and he taught them about these little black boxes and everything else. Listen, just focus on the Torah. You don't have to overcomplicate it. It's easy to understand. If you need to translate it into your native language, do so, but make sure it's a word for word translation and transliteration. Make sure it's correct so you can understand it and you can teach others about it. It's always good to submit to other people's authority when they know more about the Bible, the Torah than you. Listen, keep an open mind, but always like Rabbinates say, go back to the Gemara. Well, always go back to the Torah and never leave the Torah. As Karaite Jews say, Tanakh, our Jewish Bible, and nothing else. God bless you. Take care. Hakam Ben-Emmett signing out. I'll see you real soon. Shalom Aleichem. If you've enjoyed this program, please click like and subscribe.